The year is 1993. Michael Jackson tore the house down during the Super Bowl halftime show. Bill Clinton was inaugurated as the 42nd president of the United States. Jurassic Park was released to theaters and became a sensation, grossing over $1 billion at the box office. Michael Jordan announced his first retirement from the NBA after completing his first three-peat that summer. Michael Jordan did this in October of that year, but a month later in November, Snoop Dogg dropped his classic debut album, Doggystyle. Before getting more into the video though, I would quickly like to plug that I made a TikTok that you guys should definitely go follow. I'll be posting content on there. I'm trying to get that popping, so definitely go out and support that. And if you haven't already done it yet, go follow my Instagram too. That would be greatly appreciated. You guys can always reach out to me and show me some love. It's all good. Make sure to comment on what it was like for you in 1993 when this album first came out and what was your reaction off of your first listen. Back to the story though, and at the beginning of 1993, Snoop Dogg was white hot coming off of the success of Dr. Dre's debut album, The Chronic. That album ended up going triple platinum by the time Doggystyle was released. It also came out in December of 1992, meaning that 1993 is when the album came to prominence. Even though The Chronic isn't officially acknowledged as a collab album, it pretty much is, with Snoop Dogg appearing on just about every track. He appears on well over half of the tracks on the album. This includes the singles F with Dre Day, which peaked at number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, and Nothing But a G Thang, which peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and went platinum. The Chronic is a big piece of the story behind Doggystyle because while Deep Cover in 1992 was Snoop's introduction to the world, The Chronic was one of, if not the most commercially successful rap albums to that point. With all of those ears, Snoop Dogg left a great impression which led to a lot of hype. Naturally, people wanted to hear more from him. Initially, Snoop Dogg was just happy being the guy that was on The Chronic and didn't have aspirations to create his own album and be the star. But with all this attention, it was now Snoop's turn to drop. Throughout the making of Doggystyle, Snoop extensively worked with Dr. Dre and the DOC. Dr. Dre and Snoop already had great chemistry together, which is evident by their work on The Chronic. Dr. Dre is credited with producing Doggystyle in its entirety. There is some controversy behind this, but more on that later. Hanging out with Dr. Dre all the time added to their chemistry, and it allowed Dr. Dre the chance to get to know Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg was very into a lot of 70s old school blaxploitation films. This served as a huge inspiration behind the making of the album, along with the music that Snoop and Dr. Dre grew up on. The DOC also tremendously helped out Snoop with his rhymes. In an interview with Drink Champs not that long ago, he explained how Snoop would just rap for 30 minutes straight. In those 30 minutes, there were dry spots mixed with some cool spots. The DOC taught him how to structure his rhymes by telling Snoop to get in to say what he needed to say and not bore his audience. Leading up to his debut album, it's said that Suge Knight did not want Snoop Dogg's first song as a leading artist to not be on Doggystyle. There is somewhat of an exception to this with the song Don't Give a F. This song appeared on the soundtrack of the movie Poetic Justice, which was released in the summer of 1993.
I'm headed for the little does he know there's a crew of niggas waiting to put him on their hood and they've been anticipating.
This was originally Snoop's song and it has two different original versions. The story goes that people behind the scenes of the Poetic Justice movie wanted Snoop Dogg on the soundtrack. With Suge not wanting this to be Snoop Dogg's first song as a leading artist, Corrupt did Snoop's verse and Snoop just did the hook. Daz and Corrupt wrote their own verses at the end of the song. Because of this, it was now a Dog Pound track and is known as the first true song from the Dog Pound. But everything seemed to be going well for Snoop until his world got turned upside down in August of 1993. Snoop and his bodyguard were involved in a shooting that led to the death of Philip Waldemariam. If convicted, Snoop Dogg would have spent the rest of his life in jail and rap history would have been changed forever. This was a big deal because not only did someone lose their life, but at this time there was a huge movement against rap music. People in the media deemed it violent, misogynistic, vulgar, etc. C. Dolores Tucker is a notable person for being against rap, and once Doggystyle was released, she took deep issue with the album. Though Snoop Dogg was dealing with the case that ultimately wouldn't get resolved until 1996, he kept it moving by appearing on 2 iconic magazine covers just a short time after the Philip Waldemariam incident. In September, Snoop Dogg appeared on the first issue of Vibe magazine and appeared alongside Dr. Dre on the cover of Rolling Stones magazine. Snoop Dogg and Jimmy Iovine, the co-founder of Interscope Records who distributed Death Row Records, got into it over Snoop Dogg not wanting to appear on the cover of Rolling Stone. He instead wanted to appear in a magazine like The Source because it had more of a hip-hop audience. Jimmy Iovine tried to convince Snoop by telling him that Rolling Stone was more international and had a broader audience. Snoop Dogg eventually agreed to do the cover, and it ended up paying off because it introduced him to a whole different demographic. White people now knew who Snoop Dogg was, which shocked him. Snoop said that his appearance on Rolling Stone magazine drastically increased his album sales. The first single to be released from the album was Who Am I, What's My Name. It released in early November of 1993. This single peaked at number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100 and surprisingly has only gone gold.
Hits the bounce of the wild, creeping and crawling, Yiggy yes yo, and Snoop Doggy Dogg.
Later on that month, Doggystyle was released to stores, topping the Billboard 200 charts, selling over 800,000 copies in its first week. It was the most anticipated rap album ever to that point. As of today, the album is quadruple platinum. Upon its release, it set the record for being the fastest selling hip hop album and the highest rap album from a debuting artist. The cover art for the album was done by Snoop's cousin, Joe Cool. About the artwork, Joe said, "Snoop came to me and told me, I want you to draw my cover, man. I said, you serious? He said, yeah, we gonna pay you, gonna give you some money. He gave me the idea. He said, well, Dr. Dre really wants a picture of me on top of a doghouse, reaching over, feeling on a dog's butt or something. But I want you to draw it though. We'll run it by Dre." Dre said, alright, go ahead. And just like that, this classic album artwork was completed. It should be mentioned that there are some stories floating around about the album from various sources about whether it was ever officially completed and or rushed before its release. In an interview with Rolling Stone in 2013, Suge Knight stated that they only had one song done before the Philip Waldemariam incident. Bruce Williams, who was at one point Dr. Dre's right-hand man, said that Doggystyle was never finished. A lot of people don't understand that the album was never finished. They were demanding that album so much that it came to a point where the distributors said, we're going to cancel our orders if you don't get this to us. In 48 hours, Dre mixed the album and did all of the skits. So they had to record all of that and it was done in 48 hours straight. For me, that was the most phenomenal stuff in the world. You could just see a line of Hennessy bottles in the studio. You saw lobster and stuff everywhere, but nobody touched it. Everything for 48 hours was all about music. I remember that Dre laid on the sofa for about 15 minutes and Snoop looked up and saw him laying down. All I remember is Snoop with the pool cue hitting the sofa saying, "Come on Dr. Dre, get your butt up. You gotta mix my album." So in a 48-hour period, we went from mixing the album from top to bottom, putting the skits in, and getting it out there. In a Los Angeles Times article from early November of 1993, it states that Doggystyle was 21 days past the deadline, which meant that it was supposed to come out in October of that year. The article also states that Snoop was not finished with his vocals for the last 2 tracks on the album. Jimmy Iovine became anxious while questioning if Dr. Dre would meet his latest deadline, a deadline that Dre did meet with the album coming out later in November. In a Los Angeles Times article, also reported about the pressure from retailers and Interscope's own distribution company to get the album out. In the article for Dre and Snoop's Rolling Stone cover story in 1993, it stated that 2 weeks before Doggystyle was scheduled to hit the streets, Dr. Dre refused to let Jimmy Iovine listen to more than 2 songs outside of the studio from the album. Also, in this specific Rolling Stone article, Dr. Dre mentions his collection of reels. He pointed out that he had 35 or 36 reels of just Snoop's music. Each reel held 3 songs. Out of the 35 or 36 reels, Dre said that he only liked 5. With simple math, this means that if Dr. Dre is to be believed, he had 105 to 108 Snoop Dogg songs that he made during the making of Doggystyle. He further added that this was just a small example of how deep he was going into making this album. There is quite a few songs that were made during the recording sessions for Doggystyle that did not make the album for numerous reasons. While there is songs from these sessions that went on to be on other projects, for this video, I'll just focus on songs that were intended for the album that were recorded during these sessions. We'll start off with The Root of All Evil outro.
Back is Lady T. And Snoop Dogg knocking on my door.
This song features the late great Tina Marie. The Root of All Evil outro track went unreleased for years until it finally appeared on the 2009 compilation album Death Row: The Lost Sessions Volume 1. Another track that appears on the Death Row: The Lost Sessions Volume 1 compilation album is Doggystyle. It features background vocals from Jewel and George Clinton. It's alleged that this track was supposed to be the intro of Doggystyle, with this being the self-titled track.
Yeah, it's Doggystyle. It's Doggystyle. Yeah.
It is believed that sample clearance issues and the album's rushed process is to be blamed for it being cut from Doggystyle. This definitely would have been a great intro for the album if it wasn't taken off. Later on down the line, this beat got flipped into the song A Dog's Day Afternoon, which landed on the 1995 album Dog Food by the Dog Pound. The instrumental for this Dog Pound song was also used for an unreleased and untitled song that was recorded during the recording of the Murder Was the Case soundtrack. Falling Asleep on Death Row is another track that appeared on the Death Row: The Lost Sessions Volume 1 compilation album. I'm personally not a huge fan of the track.
Not knowing I'm scoping on the roof. I got my red beam, better have your bulletproof, cause the light don't miss once I put it to your dome.
The last track that I will talk about from the Death Row: The Lost Sessions Volume 1 is the song Eat a D. This song was actually mentioned during Snoop Dogg's article with Rolling Stone in 1993 when he graced the cover alongside Dr. Dre.
Sounds like a contraceptive, I hope you get burnt. Seems you haven't learned, it's the knick-knack, paddywhack, I still got the biggest sack.
Part of Snoop's first verse for the song was repurposed for Doggy Dog World, which appeared on Doggystyle. It also uses pretty much the same beat as the song Serial Killer with minor changes. The song Serial Killer also appears on Doggystyle as well. The song Every Single Day is one of, if not the first records that Snoop Dogg's cousin Daz Dillinger produced for Doggystyle. The original version of the song has Snoop Dogg, Nate Dogg, and Corrupt. Snoop Dogg repurposes some of his lyrics on the song for the song G's and Hustlers, which appeared on Doggystyle. Every Single Day went unreleased for years until it finally appeared on Death Row Presents The Dog Pound 2002. This was a compilation album from the Dog Pound that released in 2001. The compilation version has Jewel instead of Nate Dogg.
Single day, I keep a strap in my pocket when I step, cause niggas be tripping thinking I'm slipping, but I ain't slipped yet.
The song Smoke On samples the Floater song Float On. It's unclear why it got cut from the album. Maybe it's because of the other reasons why songs got cut from the album, or it just simply did not fit. Nothing is officially confirmed, but this song is definitely a gem.
You see, way back in the days on 10th and Lime, it was on. I'd wake up in the morning just to get my come up on. It was me and my cousin, sleeping in the same bed, smoking on the same bud, giving up that family love. And it wasn't no motherfucking thing to push a little cane on the side while I gang bang.
The song Big Girls is a very short 1.5 minute long track about Snoop's affinity for girls on the larger side.
Ain't no reason for the dog to lie. I like it when they wake about 2:05 with all this shit going on.
Last but not least, there's a song titled Poor Young Dave. It remained unreleased until 2009 when The Chronic Relit and From the Vault was released.
There once was a kid by the name of Dave who stayed in the mix and never ever obeyed. He paid no attention.
The last thing to mention about the backstory behind this album is that there was a chance that this album could have been on another label instead of Death Row Records. During that interview Suge Knight did with Rolling Stone, Suge Knight talked about how Russell Simmons, the co-founder of Def Jam Records, flew Snoop Dogg out to discuss a potential record deal. They figured if they could work it out with Snoop, they could work it out with Jimmy Iovine, and where'd that leave me? So then, that's when people turned around and said, oh, Death Row MFers is some effed up MFers, and Suge Knight's an aggressive MFer, because somebody had to put their foot so far up Russell's butt, he thought he was in the hot tub with the guys he usually be with. We had to go out there and literally smash them. If not, they take our stuff. I still give Snoop the credit, he still sat down with Death Row and we made it happen. We all more mature now. So this is the story behind the events leading up to the album, but in the second part of the video, I'll break down the story of each track.
Back with the 1, 2, 3 into the 4. It's the S, O into the O.
The album starts off with the skit Bathtub. This skit references the classic 1972 blaxploitation film Superfly. Ron O'Neal, who portrayed the character Priest in Superfly, talks about leaving the cocaine business. In the skit on Doggystyle, Snoop references getting out of the game as well. Warren G is a part of the skit, with him telling Snoop to not get out of the game, similar to the character in Superfly who's trying to convince Priest to not do the same thing. G-Funk Intro is the next track on the album. It only made sense to have George Clinton in the intro because he was a huge inspiration to the G-Funk genre of rap. Snoop Dogg has deep admiration for George because he grew up off of his music. His generation grew up listening to funk music, which is why they had the idea to sample it years later. Snoop Dogg says that George Clinton was one of the few people from the older generation who embraced hip-hop in its early stages and let people sample his music and work with them. A lot of George music is interpolated and or sampled throughout Doggystyle. On this track specifically, the song by George's band, Funkadelic, titled Not Just Knee Deep, is interpolated.
Never listen a beat, yeah.
I'm sipping on Tanqueray with my mind on my money and my mouth full of ganja.
The Lady of Rage featured on the track and delivers a very dope verse. This track then fades into the classic song Gin and Juice. This ended up being the second single from the album, peaking at number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. It went gold in April of 1994 and surprisingly has yet to go platinum.
With so much drama in the LBC, it's kinda hard being Snoop D-O-double-G, but somehow, someway.
Jin and Juice is home to one of the catchiest hooks in rap history. It's a hook that pretty much everyone knows. The hook interpolates the Slave song Watching You. In an interview with Pandora about the song, Snoop said, Gin and Juice was the choice of drink for a young player. 1991, 1992, you didn't really have a lot of money, you go get that gin. When it came time to make the record, Doggystyle, that was my thing. Every day I would come to the studio with my bottle of gin and juice in it, and Dre would have a big milk jug full of gin and juice. We were in the studio one day and someone was singing that Slave song Watching You. We flipped it into rolling down the street smoking Indo, sipping on gin and juice, and made it happen from there. Snoop Dogg initially mixed his gin with Super Sacco fruit juice, but he later switched out his fruit juice with Donald Duck orange juice. At the beginning of this year, Dr. Dre and Snoop joined forces to launch a ready-to-drink gin and juice. I don't drink alcohol, so for those who have tried it, let me know how it tastes. However, there is some controversy behind the song. Emmanuel Dean, a producer who worked with Snoop Dogg and the Dogg Pound in the past, is on record saying that he never got credit for his work. But I know I did Jin and Juice, and I know Dr. Dre cannot play any music. He definitely made the beat, but I mean, as far as the music was concerned, he watched and I definitely did what I had to do, you know, and I asked him for credit and money, and when he said for what, I already had a publishing deal offered to me by BMI. I let him answer the way he wanted to answer, and when he said for what, I was like, okay, cool. Right then and there, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with BMI. So the next day, I came back to him and I said Friday's my last day. I think I made about $5,000 or $6,000 working with them, and I did Jin and Juice, and I did Snoop Doggy Dogg on the second day I knew Dr. Dre. The second day I knew him, I did Snoop Doggy Dogg. I didn't get a platinum record. Daz Dillinger is even on record giving Emmanuel credit for producing the song. He said that Emmanuel played the keyboard and came up with the melodies while Dr. Dre just did the drums, and agreed that Dr. Dre should have given him a credit. Daz Dillinger has his own problems with being uncredited or not properly credited by Dr. Dre. Ain't no fun if the homies can't have none. It's just one record that he says that he produced, but Dr. Dre takes credit for it. Throughout the years, the production of Dr. Dre has been called into question many times from people who have had similar experiences to Daz and Emmanuel. It definitely isn't new, but I want to give a big rest in peace to Emmanuel, who sadly passed away in 2019. The next track on the album is an interlude titled W Balls. W Balls is a fictional radio station led by DJ Salty Nuts, who's voiced by Ricky Harris. He's done a ton of work with Snoop Dogg, whether it's appearing in his skits, music videos, movies, etc. But the thing that he's perhaps most known for is portraying the character Malvo in the show Everybody Hates Chris. He was a friend of Snoop's, and unfortunately, he also passed away in 2016. Apparently, the name DJ Easy Dick is a diss towards Eazy-E, with Snoop Dogg inheriting Dr. Dre's beef with Eazy-E. There are many sexual innuendos, not just with this interlude, but throughout the album. I mean, the album is literally titled Doggystyle. But the W Balls interlude then fades into the track The Shiznit.
Now I'm on another mission, wishing upon a star. Snoop Doggy Dogg with the caviar.
This is one of my favorite tracks on the album, and according to Snoop Dogg, he freestyled this whole record, which is really impressive. The DOC has said that this is true, and he also said that Snoop Dogg was in the zone throughout the album. In his first verse, Snoop Dogg says chill to the next episode, which he famously said a year prior on the Dr. Dre song Nuthin But a G Thang. This line was inspired by what Eric Sermon said on an EPMD song titled It's My Thing. There was originally going to be a song titled The Next Episode that was intended for Doggystyle. It was listed on track listings provided to retailers before the album's release, but it did not appear on the official album. I've seen two different reasons why this happened. Some say that it was because of an uncleared sample, while others claim that it was because of a deadline to turn in the album. The song could not be mixed and mastered in time, so it was left off altogether. Either way, it ended up not appearing. A stripped down version of the beat was later used on Warren G's song Running With No Brakes. This appeared on his debut album in 1994. The rapper Crooked Eye later used it for his song Real Thugs. People searched for this original version for years, but in 2018, a semi-high quality fan reconstruction of the song was uploaded to YouTube by a person named King Zero Elizabeth.
Thought it was gone, but it's gone once again. Light up the chronic while I take a couple of sips of the gin. If it back on track as we roll like a self-made crew.
As we know, years later in 1999, Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre released the hit song The Next Episode, but it was a completely different song. The Domino intro interlude plays right after The Shiznit. Dr. Dre and Daz Dillinger appear in the skit playing dominoes. During the interlude, Daz asked Dr. Dre what was up with him being dissed on TV. This was a reference to Eazy-E's appearance on the Arsenio Hall show, where he dissed Snoop and Dr. Dre. Daz Dillinger dissed Eazy-E on the skit by calling him a buster and HIV MFer. This is a very eerie line because in 1995, just 2 years after the track, Eazy-E died from AIDS, which is the late stage of HIV infection that occurs when the body's immune system is badly damaged because of the virus. The next track on the album, Lottie Dottie, pays homage to the 1985 Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick song of the same name. Snoop Dogg got a lot of hate for doing the song over because people felt that he was biting, but to him, he was paying homage. Many of his personal friends felt that with Snoop Dogg being from the West Coast, if he was to remake a song, he should have done something from there, not the East Coast. The Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick song Lottie Dottie meant a lot to Snoop Dogg as a kid because he was enamored by the chemistry between the two. He wanted to redo the song because he was a fan and he wanted to show love. Though Snoop Dogg loved the song ever since it came out, it was actually Dr. Dre who gave Snoop the idea of remaking it. On his version of the song, Snoop Dogg told people who did not like what he was doing to eat a D. It should also be mentioned that Snoop Dogg was showing love to Slick Rick back in 1993 because during this time, Slick Rick was doing time in prison for an attempt and other charges. Speaking of cases though, the next track on the album is Murder Was the Case. Without a doubt, one of the scariest music videos and songs in rap history. To this day, I still get creeped out listening and watching the music video for the song. I remember as a kid watching those Illuminati videos about the music video of the song and they terrified me. Earlier, I mentioned how Daz Dillinger eerily talked about Eazy-E having HIV 2 years before he died of AIDS. Well, Snoop Dogg made the song Murder Was the Case before his trial. My peers, we wrote about death. You see, and I wrote that song Murder Was the Case where I was like, I came with my boo-boos about to have my baby. She wasn't even pregnant, and I hadn't even caught the murder case. That's the effing crazy part about it. He was born May 20th, right? 1994. The case was in August of 1993. So I wrote Murder Was the Case about some stuff that had never happened in my life. I didn't have a baby, I didn't have a case, but my penmanship was writing stuff that was about to happen. The title of the track is a callback to Snoop's verse on the song Lil Ghetto Boy, which appeared on The Chronic, a soundtrack album and short film related to the song released after Doggystyle. Some other facts about the song is that Daz Dillinger featured on the track and portrays the devil. Snoop Dogg also famously performed the song at the 1993 MTV Video Music Awards. At the end of the performance, he proclaimed his innocence. Ultimately, in 1996, Snoop Dogg was acquitted of all charges. The last thing that I have to say about this record is that according to Snoop Dogg, he originally wrote the song to a different beat, but when Dr. Dre gave him the beat that we have today, Snoop Dogg changed his course. The next track is Serial Killer, and I couldn't find much about this track online history-wise. After this comes the track Who Am I, What's My Name. As I noted earlier, this was the first single for the album. Jewel, the first lady of Death Row, does the hook on the record. She absolutely killed it, such an iconic hook, RIP to Jewel. The entire song interpolates and is inspired by the George Clinton song Atomic Dog. When talking about the song, Snoop Dogg said that he would hang out with Dre every day. One day when they were cruising around, the song Atomic Dog came on. Snoop replaced the hook of the song with Snoop Doggy Dogg, and they immediately got to work in the studio creating the song. The song For All My follows this, and Snoop Dogg does not have a proper verse on the song. He only appears on the bridge of the song near the end. The Lady of Rage, Corrupt, and Daz Dillinger all feature on the song and have verses. In the intro of the next song, Ain't No Fun If the Homies Can't Have None, DJ Easy Dick makes his return to drop another banger. In a 2006 interview, Snoop Dogg said that Daz Dillinger and Warren G brought Dr. Dre the melody of the record, but Dre brought the song to life. When questioned about if the two deserved credit for their work, Snoop said, "I'ma say it like this. They didn't deserve the credit back then because they didn't do the work. They made beats. Dre produced that record. Point blank, and I'd say it in their face. They made beats. Cuz produced the record. If you a real dude in the rap game, you'll understand what I'm saying. I can make a beat, but I can't produce it. I can make a beat, but can I tell a dude what to rap about? Can I tell him when to come with the hook? Can you break the beat down? That's what producing is." Mind you, this is what Snoop Dogg said in 2006. Once again, I will refer to that interview that Suge Knight did with Rolling Stone in 2013. In this interview, he said specifically that Ain't No Fun was done by one of his friends named Pook from the Mad Swan Bloods. The MSBs are a Los Angeles subset of the Blood Street Gang. Also, in this interview, Suge Knight outright says that Daz Dillinger pretty much entirely produced Doggystyle. But as far as Ain't No Fun, years later, there was a lawsuit over the song which ultimately got dismissed due to the filing being way too late. They had a 3-year window which expired all the way back in 1996. Anyways, Nate Dogg does the first verse on the song, and RP to Nate Dogg. He absolutely killed it and has a very memorable verse. Warren G and Corrupt also appear on the song as well. After Ain't No Fun, Snoop Dogg takes a chronic break in an interlude. In this interlude, Snoop Dogg tells a girl that her without him is like Harold Melvin without the Blue Notes. They'll never go platinum. Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes were a soul group from back in the day. Without the Blue Notes, he says that Harold Melvin would have never went platinum. This is essentially Snoop telling his girl that she would be nothing without him. Following the chronic break comes Doggy Dog World, which ended up being the last single for the album. Doggy Dog World features the Dramatics, Nancy Fletcher, and the Dog Pound. The hook of the song is an interpolation of a line from the Richard Dimples Field song, "If It Ain't One Thing, It's Another." This track is followed by the Classroom intro interlude, which transitions into the song G's and Hustlers. According to Snoop Dogg, this song was supposed to be a mic check. On the mic check, he freestyled, and this freestyle became what we hear today. Checking interlude is the last interlude on the album, and it heavily references the 1973 blaxploitation film The Mac. G's Up is the next track on the album.
Ladies and gents, players and pimps, listen. Pay attention.
According to Snoop, this song was only on the first 100,000 copies of Doggystyle. It ended up being absent from the later copies of the album due to issues with clearing the Isaac Hayes sample, The Look of Love. G's Up has always notably been unplayable on streaming services, even when Doggystyle was re-uploaded back to DSPs in 2023. Later on in 2023, for the 30th anniversary of Doggystyle, the son of Isaac Hayes announced that the song G's Up was finally going to appear on streaming services. He further added that the sample not being cleared was not his dad's fault. It was because of the powers that be at the time. G's Up is without a doubt, in my opinion, one of the best songs on the album. The song Pump Pump featuring Malik, Snoop Dogg's cousin, ends this classic album. Just like that, we're done. It was a hell of a journey. The impact and influence this album not only had on the West Coast, but the overall game is immense. To say that Snoop Dogg delivered on the most anticipated rap album to that point in 1993 is an understatement. Doggystyle is also important because it solidified Death Row as a label. The Chronic was the first drop and it turned out to be huge, but Doggystyle dropped less than a year later and that really took off the label. All in all, let me know what you guys thought of the video in the comment section below. Love you guys with all my heart. Peace.